That night, I watched someone walk into the cabin through the front door, even though I had pushed a heavy dresser against it an hour earlier. I never heard the dresser move. I never heard the door open. I only looked up because the old wooden floor creaked once, and there was suddenly a man standing inside, dripping rainwater onto the floorboards. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the empty chair beside the fireplace, like someone was already sitting there. Then he quietly said, "You weren't supposed to come back." The worst part wasn't what he said. It was that I had never been to that cabin before. I booked the place because I wanted to disappear for a weekend. My phone had been ringing for weeks because of work. My apartment building was under construction, and every day felt louder than the last. I found the cabin through a vacation rental website. It was deep in northern Montana, surrounded by thick pine forest, with the nearest gas station almost 40 minutes away. The listing promised complete privacy, no neighbors, and a peaceful lake just behind the property. That sounded perfect. The owner messaged me the morning I left. The lockbox code is 4198. Reception is poor after the bridge. If anything happens, use the landline inside. I didn't think much of that. Plenty of remote cabins still had landlines. The drive was beautiful at first. Long, empty roads, mountains in the distance, and trees that seemed to swallow the sky. After crossing an old wooden bridge, my phone lost signal exactly like the owner had warned. The GPS froze. Thankfully, there was only one road left to follow. The cabin looked older than the pictures. The paint had faded. One window on the second floor was covered with plywood. The porch leaned slightly to one side. It wasn't falling apart, but it looked tired. Still, it felt peaceful. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The air smelled like old wood and dust. There was a fireplace, a couch, a tiny kitchen, and a staircase leading upstairs. Everything looked clean enough. A handwritten note rested on the kitchen counter. "Storm expected tonight. Please lock every door before dark." That was it. No welcome message, no Wi-Fi password, just that sentence. Outside, clouds were already gathering. I unpacked my bag, started a fire, and spent the afternoon reading near the window. Around sunset, the wind picked up hard enough to make the trees bend. Rain started soon after. Heavy drops hammered the roof, while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the lake. I remembered the note and checked every door and window. The back door had 3 locks. The front door had 2. It felt excessive. I laughed to myself and locked everything anyway. Around 8 that evening, the lights flickered once, then again. Finally, they went out completely. The fireplace became the only light in the cabin. I found several candles in a kitchen drawer and lit them. The silence outside felt strange. The rain had almost stopped, but I couldn't hear insects or frogs, just wind. Then I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy. They stopped directly outside the front door. I waited. Nothing. After nearly a minute, someone knocked. 3 slow knocks. Not loud, just enough to let me know they were there. I looked through the peephole. Nobody. The porch was empty. I opened the curtain beside the window to get a better angle. Still nothing. The footsteps had been too heavy to imagine. I convinced myself it had probably been branches hitting the porch. I shut the curtain. 5 seconds later, 3 more knocks. This time they came from the back door. Every hair on my arms stood up. I grabbed the flashlight from my backpack and walked carefully toward the kitchen. The back door had a small square window. I aimed the flashlight outside. Nothing. Just rain falling through the beam. No footprints. No person. No movement. The knocking didn't happen again that night. At least, not until after midnight. I had just fallen asleep on the couch when something crashed upstairs. It sounded like furniture being dragged across the floor. I sat up immediately. The cabin only had one bedroom upstairs. I hadn't even unpacked there. The noise stopped. Then came 3 slow footsteps, directly above me. I told myself the house was settling. Old buildings make noises. Wind can shake floorboards. But the footsteps continued. 1, another, a third, then silence. I spent almost 10 minutes staring at the ceiling before finally forcing myself upstairs. Every room was empty. Nothing had fallen. Nothing had moved. Except the bedroom window was open. I was certain it had been closed. Rainwater covered the floor beneath it. I shut it, locked it, and went back downstairs. By morning, I almost felt embarrassed. Sleep deprivation, storm anxiety, a cabin in the woods playing tricks on my imagination. I drove into the nearest town for breakfast. The waitress noticed the cabin key sitting beside my coffee mug. "You staying at Miller's place?" I nodded. She frowned. "I thought nobody rented that anymore." "Why?" She hesitated. "You should ask about the family." Before I could respond, another customer interrupted her, and she quickly changed the subject. That should have been my warning. Instead, curiosity pulled me deeper. On my way back, I stopped at the small general store near the bridge. An older man behind the register noticed the same key. "You rentin' the cabin?" "Yeah." He stared at me longer than necessary. "Don't stay there after Sunday." I laughed. "I'm leaving tomorrow." He didn't smile. "Good." When I asked why, he simply looked toward the forest outside. Some places remember people. That sentence stayed with me the entire drive back. The second evening felt different from the moment I arrived. The woods seemed quieter. No birds, no squirrels. Even the lake looked strangely still. As I unloaded groceries, I noticed muddy footprints on the porch. Bare feet, large ones. They led toward the front door, but none led away. I checked the lock, still locked. Inside, everything looked normal, until I reached the living room. The rocking chair beside the fireplace was moving, very slowly. Forward, back. Forward, back. There wasn't enough wind to move it. I stood there watching until it finally stopped on its own. That night, I didn't wait for another power outage. I locked every door, moved the dresser in front of the entrance, kept the flashlight beside me. Around 11, I heard voices outside. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I realized someone was whispering. More than one person. Too quiet to understand. The whispers circled the cabin, never getting closer, never getting farther. Just circling. I turned off every candle and stayed completely still. The whispers continued for almost 20 minutes. Then they suddenly stopped. Silence. Absolute silence. I checked every window. Nothing. Just darkness. Relieved, I sat back down. That's when I heard footsteps inside the cabin. Upstairs. Slow. Deliberate. Impossible. I knew every door was locked. I grabbed the fireplace poker and climbed the stairs. Each step groaned beneath my feet. The hallway was empty. The bedroom door stood open. The window was closed. Nothing had changed. until I noticed the closet door. It was open about 2 inches. I was positive it had been shut earlier. I slowly pulled it open. Empty. Just old blankets. I laughed nervously, turned around, and nearly screamed. Someone had written 3 words on the dusty bedroom mirror. Not your house. The letters looked like they had been traced with a finger. Fresh. I wiped them away immediately. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the flashlight. I didn't sleep. I stayed downstairs until sunrise with every light on. The moment the sun came up, I packed my things. I didn't care about wasting the reservation anymore. I just wanted to leave. As I loaded my car, I noticed tire tracks. Another vehicle had parked beside mine during the night. The ground was soft from rain. The tracks were fresh. But there was only one set leaving. Mine. No second set exited the property. I followed the tracks with my eyes. They disappeared into the trees, not onto a road, into the forest. I almost drove away without looking back. Instead, I made one mistake. I wanted answers. I drove into town and visited the tiny historical museum. It was mostly old farming tools and photographs. An elderly volunteer asked if I needed help. I mentioned the cabin. Her expression changed immediately. She unlocked a filing cabinet and removed an old newspaper. The headline read, "Local family missing after cabin fire." The article was 32 years old. According to investigators, a family of 4 disappeared after neighbors reported smoke coming from the cabin. Firefighters arrived to find no active fire, just smoke inside. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no explanation. The parents' truck remained outside. Dinner sat untouched on the table. Their youngest son's backpack was still hanging by the door. Everyone simply vanished. Police searched the forest for weeks. Nothing. The cabin was eventually sold. Every owner left within a year. Some refused to explain why. Others claimed someone kept entering the house at night. One owner insisted he heard conversations between people who weren't there. He disappeared 6 months later. His truck was found near the bridge, empty. I felt sick. The volunteer pointed toward an old photograph clipped beside the article. It showed the family standing on the porch. The father looked exactly like the man I saw walk into the cabin the previous night. Same beard, same raincoat, same face. I drove back one last time, not because I wanted to stay, because I had left my laptop inside. It contained years of work. I told myself I'd be in and out within 5 minutes. The front door was still blocked by the dresser, exactly where I had left it. I pushed it aside and stepped inside. The cabin felt colder than before. Not naturally cold, empty cold, like nobody had lived there for years. My laptop sat on the coffee table. Next to it rested an old photograph. I hadn't seen it before. It showed the cabin from decades earlier. Standing on the porch was me. Not exactly me. The clothes were wrong. The hairstyle looked older. The picture itself had faded edges. But the face, my face, standing beside the missing family. I stared at it until I convinced myself I was imagining the resemblance. Then I flipped it over. On the back, written in faded blue ink, were 6 words. He finally came back. Summer 1994. I was born in 1999. I dropped the photograph and ran outside. The driver's door slammed behind me. Hands shaking, I started the engine. Nothing. The battery was dead. It had been perfectly fine 20 minutes earlier. I tried again. Nothing. The forest around me remained silent. Then I heard footsteps behind the cabin, several pairs, walking together, not rushing, just approaching. I didn't wait. I grabbed my backpack and sprinted toward the road. The bridge was nearly 2 miles away. I never looked behind me. Branches snapped somewhere inside the trees, always matching my speed, never catching up, never falling behind. Every few minutes I heard someone call my name, not yelling, speaking calmly, like a friend trying to get my attention. I refused to turn around. Finally, I reached the bridge. The moment I stepped onto it, every sound stopped. No footsteps, no voices, nothing. A passing truck picked me up 20 minutes later. The driver asked why I looked terrified. I couldn't explain it. When we reached town, I called the rental owner. The number was disconnected. The vacation listing had disappeared. The email address bounced back. It was like the cabin had never been available to rent. Months passed before I could even think about what happened. Eventually, I convinced myself that stress had twisted everything. Maybe someone had been living in the woods. Maybe the photograph was edited. Maybe fear had filled in the blanks. Then a package arrived at my apartment. No return address. Inside was the photograph from the cabin, the one showing me standing beside the missing family. Only this time, there was something different. At the far edge of the porch, barely visible behind everyone else, stood another man. The same man who had walked into the cabin through the blocked front door. I hadn't noticed him before. When I looked closer, I realized he wasn't looking at the camera. He was staring directly at me. Not the version of me in the picture. Me, the person holding the photograph. Taped to the back was a small note. 3 words. See you Sunday. I threw the photograph into my fireplace that night and watched it burn until nothing remained except ash. The following morning, while leaving for work, I noticed muddy, barefoot footprints outside my apartment door. They ended exactly at my welcome mat. There were no prints leading away. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know which part creeped you out the most. I'll see you in the next one.